How can businesses adapt to the new normal? It's hard keeping up with all the fast-paced change that's happening around us. But in this video, we're going to talk about what you can do to stay ahead of the curve and let go of some of that stress. First, we're going to identify what you should ideally have in place before major change takes place. Next, we'll address how the way that we think will impact our ability to change. And then lastly, you're going to leave with action items that you can use to help your organization retain relevance. Let's get started. So we're going to start off by me sharing with you something that futurists do. That's what I am. Futurists are people who our jobs are to help organizations or individuals not just prepare for the future that they're expecting, but 2 to 3 other alternative futures that are highly likely. There's many steps that futurists use to help individuals and organizations prepare for those alternate futures, but it starts off with us observing trends and signals. Now, trends are the things that we always think about. Those are things that we kind of see are already happening, and we start to see not critical mass, but enough of a thing happening where we're like, ooh, this might be the new thing we have to prepare for. This is a shift that's happening. A signal is something that's weaker. It's the difference between your baby crying when they're just like really upset in the middle of the night, or that little whimper you hear when they first wake up, that meh, and you're like, uh-oh, I think they might be about to cry. So it's telling you a little bit of something, but the message isn't clear yet. It's a signal. So you might be asking yourself, well, if it's not clear, where do I find signals? You know people who naturally are great at absorbing signals. These are the people that always seem to be ahead of fashion trends or always seem to know what's going on around them. Oftentimes they have jobs or they live in places where they come in contact with a lot of people. So they're watching, and that is the key. To be able to absorb signals, it's just a matter of observing what's going on around you. And usually it's not in the most obvious places where other people in your industry are looking. And so if everyone in your industry is looking at industry periodicals, you might want to start looking at other sister industries. So if you're in home services, maybe lawn care, painting, all the things you do around the house, maybe you want to watch commercial farming and see some of the trends over there, understanding that many of their technology trends bleed over to you 3, 4, 5 years later. Maybe you're watching retail, which you might think has nothing to do with you, but you know that they tend to be ahead on consumer trends over anyone else. And so you start seeing sometimes the trends of another industry can be your signal, or sometimes just watching what's happening in those places makes you understand, wait, this thing is interesting. We might be able to use that. So having your ear to the street is a huge part of being able to adapt to change. And so in an organization, it might be a matter of having a monthly meeting where you're having key people, stakeholders from many different parts of the organization coming together and saying, I'm seeing this thing. And it can be something that their child said, maybe their teenager, that you think, wow, if this happens, it might affect our industry. Or it might be something that someone else just observed a couple clients saying, just as a small side note. But those are your signals. Those are the things that can help you prepare ahead of time. They're not strong enough to be trends yet, but you're having your ear to the street, so you're seeing what may actually transpire before anyone else is really talking about it seriously. I mentioned that our thinking either helps or hinders us when it comes to adapting to change. And so there's many different things we can get to in the areas of neuroscience, but specifically, let's look at 2 of our biases that we all deal with to some extent. There's one bias that's called recency bias. What that means is we overestimate the importance of things that are happening right now and in the immediate past, and how likely they are to continue into the future. Can I tell you a secret? Most humans are horrible at planning for the future. We are bad at planning for the future. What we really plan for is now, 10 years from now, with a couple tweaks. So present day, you project it out with a couple little changes. That may or may not be anything like the actual future, but that's that recency bias saying, things aren't going to change that much, or it's going to look somewhat similar, just a few smaller things. The other thing we have to watch for is the status quo bias. And that is simply the fact that most humans, whether they recognize this as conscious or unconscious, tend to prefer now to an uncertain future. I want you to think about somebody in your life who their life is a hot mess. Maybe it's due to their own decision making, or maybe things just happen to them. But we all know people whose lives are a hot mess, who have access to solutions that they could easily implement that would get them out of the situation. But they continue in that same situation. And we ask ourselves, well, this is insanity. Why do they stay here? Or why don't they make this change? It's status quo bias. Most humans prefer what they know, even if it's not ideal, to an uncertain future. And so as we're looking at adapting to change, we have to understand the future could be extremely different than it is today. And the rate of change is actually speeding up. And so when you think about how much the world has changed over the last 10 years, understand it's going to change even more at a faster pace over the next 10 years. I hope that makes sense. So what I mean is that the rate of change, it's going to be a much more dramatic shift over the next 10 years than it was even over the last 10 years. And things have changed pretty dramatically in that period of time. So we have to check our thinking. And you might be saying to yourself, well, how do I fix the fact that I have recency bias or status quo bias? Part of it is the fact that you're watching this video right now. Then it's a matter of remembering this. And as you find yourself being presented with alternative information that you don't agree with, or when you find yourself being presented with a possible innovation or technology, and you feel yourself shutting down, saying, oh, that's stupid. I don't like it. That's dumb. Rather than saying, okay, I don't understand this yet. What are potential benefits and what are potential negatives? That's where we want to train our mind to go. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I was in a car service. I was in New York for a speaking engagement. The car service had picked me up from the airport to take me to the hotel. And the gentleman driving the car asked me what I speak about. And I told him, foresight and the future of technology. And he was like, technology just moves too fast, and so much of it it's bad for humans. Now, I decided to skip over the fact that technology is technically wheels, fire, anything that we create that makes our lives easier, technically is technology, needles, everything. But I knew what he meant. He meant machines. He meant robotics. He meant things that plugged into electricity in some way. And I was quiet because I didn't really necessarily want to encourage the conversation, but he was determined. He kept going, y'all, which happens sometimes. And he said, like, for instance, the remote control, that was the beginning of laziness. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they're stupid. Like, no one needs a remote control. That was the beginning of the downhill of human society. That's when we just became lazy and everything else came off of that. I said, so you think the world would have been better if remote controls hadn't been invented? And he said, yes. And he was, very adamant. I said, interesting. I said, how do you think people with disabilities and limited mobility feel about remotes? And he said, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. I said, oh, what about older people? Because if you live long enough, all of us, if we live long enough, we will be disabled. Like it's given. Like, now some people might be disabled at 70, some people might be disabled at 105, but the point is that you live long enough, you can't move as far as you used to. So then he said at this point, he was like, oh my gosh, I had never thought of these things this way. And I said, most technology that's introduced actually does have a practical purpose. Now, don't get me wrong, y'all, there is some stuff that's stupid, but even the most asinine technologies that are out today that you might say there's no purpose to it, I guarantee you, if you dig far enough, there is a practical application. And sometimes the people that are the adherents and the ones that are most excited about the technology actually aren't thinking in terms of practicalities. What they're saying is silly. Like what they're saying is not practical. NFTs. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But my point is this. We have to open our minds to be able to assess before we count something out. Within an organization, if you want to adapt to change, you have to create support structures to support your employees through change. So that means when it comes to upskilling, you need to have good training. So some of it might be computer-based training, some of it might be in classrooms, it might be that you send some of your senior leadership off to get more intensive training and then they come and represent, but we have to make sure that we're bringing our people along. And you almost need support group-like spaces where they can actually help overcome their biases and their neuroplasticity issues where they've been doing things a certain way, so it's hard for them to switch it up. But when you think about people that are trying to give up an addiction, oftentimes many of those programs involve kind of like group therapy where people talking through things. We want to make sure that we allow space in our meetings as we're adapting to change for our employees to not only talk about their challenges, but to offer each other solutions, to hear each other, for you to acknowledge they're having a hard time, but also appreciate them and say, I know this is hard. It's hard for me too. We're all working through it. How can I support you better? That's going to help them better adapt to the change and ensure that they're supporting your organization through it as well. Now, I have a question for you. Have you already subscribed to the channel? If you haven't, what are you waiting for? This is your opportunity. Go ahead and subscribe right now. Next, adapt an attitude of being proactive without the panic. Because technology and the world is moving so fast right now, something that I see when I go into organizations as a consultant or even a speaker is this attitude of, we have to hurry up and innovate or die, right? And so it's not actually serving a purpose. Everyone's just nervous trying to find new things for no reason. We want to be proactive in allowing our people space and time to share their challenges with us, share areas where they think we could do better. If they're seeing an issue in our supply chain, our technology, or things that our clients or contacts are saying that can be done better, we want to give them a space where they can share it. And we want to have some type of team in place that's constantly evaluating and saying, all right, well, let's start implementing this thing, or this thing over here will fix that problem. So it's creating this culture of innovation and change and shifting things as needed versus just this panic culture where you feel like you have to be new all the time and you're trying to find the new thing. That just makes people nervous, not innovative, and people cannot be innovative when they're nervous. I mentioned earlier that you're going to leave this video today with items that'll help you help your organization remain relevant. What you're going to notice is in the description of this video, there's a link to download the Future Ready Playbook. This playbook is chock full of worksheets and ideas that will help your organization stay relevant and plan for those alternative futures.